The sky over the jade cloud peaks did not resemble a normal twilight, but rather a bruised purple veil torn by streaks of gold. Within the silent thunder monastery, an infant lay wrapped in silk that bore the celestial embroidery of a falling star. Master Yun, the last keeper of the void style, looked at the child and saw, not a boy, but a catalyst for the world's inevitable reshaping. The child was named Tianming, a name that whispered of the heaven's command and the heavy burden of a predetermined life. Growing up, Tianming did not chase butterflies or play with wooden toys like the village children in the valley below. Instead, his small hands gripped the hilt of a rusted iron blade, feeling a pulse within the metal that mirrored his own heartbeat. Master Yun often watched from the shadows, knowing that the rust was merely a seal for a weapon that had once severed the ties of time. "The sword does not seek the hand," the master would say, his voice like dry parchment. "The hand is merely a vessel for the sword's ancient will." By his 16th year, Tianming's movements were no longer human. They were the rhythmic flows of a river meeting the uncompromising edge of a cliff. He practiced beneath the silver waterfall, where the water fell with enough force to crush a man's bones, yet he remained untouched. Every strike he made carved symbols into the air that lingered for a heartbeat too long, defying the natural laws of the mortal realm. Rumors began to bleed through the provinces like ink on wet silk, speaking of a youth who held the mandate of the sword. Far to the north in the Palace of Obsidian Shadows, the tyrant Lord Hanju felt a tremor in his own soul. Hanju had spent decades defying his fate, murdering every oracle who dared to predict his downfall at the hands of a celestial heir. He looked at his reflection in a basin of black water and saw the stars aligning in a pattern he had dreaded since his ascension. "Bring me the boy," Hanju commanded, and 1,000 soldiers marched, their armor clanking like the teeth of a starving beast. Back at the monastery, Tianming stood at the edge of the precipice, looking toward the horizon where the north was turning dark. He felt an itch beneath his skin, a burning sensation that traced the lines of constellations across his forearms. Master Yun approached him, carrying a long box wrapped in chains of cold-forged iron that never gathered dust. "The time of hiding is over, Ming," the old man whispered, his eyes reflecting a profound, tragic clarity. As the chains fell away, the rusted iron blade Tianming had used for years shattered, revealing a core of pure, crystalline starlight. This was the Celestial Divider, a sword forged when the first star died, destined to be wielded only by one with a soul of infinite gravity. When Tianming grasped the hilt, the mountain groaned, and the clouds above parted to reveal the midday sun in all its terrifying glory. He did not feel stronger. He felt emptier, as if his individual ego was being erased to make room for a cosmic purpose. The tyrant's vanguard arrived at the base of the mountain, their banners fluttering like the wings of carrion birds. General Feng, a man who had never lost a duel, looked up at the solitary figure descending the stone steps. "Surrender the mandate, boy, and perhaps the Lord will let you live as a nameless hermit," the general bellowed. Tianming did not answer with words, for the air around him was already vibrating with the frequency of 1,000 unsheathed blades. He took a single step, and the ground beneath the soldiers rippled like the surface of a pond disturbed by a heavy stone. With a flicker of light, the vanguard's spears were severed, not by a physical strike, but by the intent radiating from Tianming's eyes. General Feng drew his Earthshaker axe, a weapon infused with the weight of a mountain, and charged with a roar that shook the pines. Tianming moved with the grace of a dream, his feet barely touching the earth as he drifted past the heavy arcs of the axe. The Celestial Divider hummed a low, mournful note as it drew a line of silver light across the general's path. The earth itself split, chasm opening that swallowed the heavy axe and sent the general tumbling into the darkness of his own defeat. The remaining soldiers fled, convinced they had faced a god, leaving Tianming alone amidst the swirling dust. But Tianming felt no pride. He felt the weight of the souls he was destined to encounter, a map of fate he could not redraw. He began his journey north, walking through villages where people knelt in the mud, sensing the divine aura that clung to his robes. In the forest of whispering ghosts, he was met by a woman named Yua, whose eyes held the cold sparkle of the moon. She was a master of the lunar needle, an assassin sent by Hanju, but her hand trembled as she saw the boy's reflection. "I was told you were a demon of destruction," she said, her needles glowing with a pale, ghostly light. "I am only a passenger on a path I did not pave." Tian Ming replied, his voice echoing with the stillness of a deep well. Instead of fighting, Yua looked into his eyes and saw the inevitable collapse of the tyrant's era. She dropped her weapons, choosing to follow him, not as a servant, but as a witness to the turning of the great wheel. Together they crossed the burning deserts, where the heat was so intense it turned the sand into jagged glass. Tian Ming's sword acted as a compass, the blade glowing brighter whenever they neared the nexus of the world's spiritual ley lines. Each night he dreamt of a celestial battlefield where giants fought for the right to define reality itself. He realized that the war in the mortal realm was merely a shadow of a much greater conflict occurring in the higher heavens. The tyrant Hanju was not just a man, he had become a vessel for the primordial chaos, an entity that sought to end all order. As they reached the gates of the Obsidian Palace, the very sky seemed to bleed, turning the world into a landscape of crimson and shadow. The palace was a fortress of impossible geometry, built from stones that whispered the sins of those who had died within its walls. Hanju stood upon the highest balcony, his hair white and flowing like a river of mercury, his hands glowing with dark fire. "You think you represent the heavens?" Hanju laughed, his voice booming across the valley like thunder. "The heavens are fickle. They gave me the power to rule, and now they try to take it back through a child." Tian Ming ascended the stairs, each step resonant with a power that began to crack the obsidian foundations of the palace. Yua stayed behind at the gate, fending off the shadows that crawled from the walls to stop the hero's progress. When Tian Ming reached the throne room, the air was so thick with killing intent that a normal man would have suffocated instantly. Hanju drew the Void Eater, a blade that consumed light and left nothing but a cold, howling vacuum in its wake. The two blades met, and the shockwave leveled the surrounding towers, sending a pillar of energy into the atmosphere. It was not a battle of strength, but a battle of two opposing philosophies, the desire to control and the duty to serve. Hanju's strikes were chaotic, desperate, and filled with the rage of a man who refused to die. Tian Ming's movements were precise, inevitable, and filled with the serenity of a star following its orbit. "I will break your fate," Hanju screamed, his Void Eater cutting through the very fabric of space.
Ow.
Tian Ming felt his shoulder open, blood the color of liquid gold spilling onto the dark floor. In that moment of pain, he understood that to fulfill the mandate, to sacrifice his own life to seal the chaos. The celestial divider began to vibrate, its crystalline surface cracking to release a light that had been trapped since the dawn of time. "The sword's path ends with me," Tian Ming whispered, closing his eyes to see the internal structure of the universe. He didn't strike at Hanju's body. He struck at the thread of destiny that bound the tyrant to the primordial chaos. With a final, blinding flash, the Obsidian Palace was consumed by a white fire that purified the corruption within the land. When the light faded, the palace was gone, replaced by a field of white lilies that bloomed instantly in the scorched earth. Hanju lay in the center, his eyes wide, no longer a tyrant, but a frail old man who had finally lost his breath. Tian Ming stood nearby, his sword now turned back into a simple, rusted iron blade, its celestial light spent. He felt a profound sense of peace, the burning itch on his arms finally cooling into faint silvery scars. Yue approached him, her face wet with tears of relief, seeing that the world had survived its darkest hour. "Is it over?" she asked, looking at the peaceful horizon, where the sun was rising with a renewed clarity. "This cycle is finished," Tian Ming replied, "but the mandate is a seed that will wait for the next winter." He did not return to the monastery. He chose to walk the earth as a nameless traveler, helping those forgotten by the great powers. The rusted sword remained at his side, a reminder that the greatest power often hides in the most humble forms. Centuries passed, and the story of Tian Ming became a legend whispered by poets and scholars in dusty libraries. They spoke of the boy who held the stars in his hand and refused the crown to keep the balance of the world. In every generation, a child is born with a mark that resembles a falling star, a sign that the heavens are watching. And in every era of darkness, a rusted blade is found in a forgotten corner, waiting for the hand that can wake its spirit. The mandate of the sword is not a gift. It is a promise that light will always find a way through the thickest shadow. Some say Tian Ming never died, but became a mountain spirit guarding the peace of the valley. Others believe he ascended to the stars, taking his place among the constellations he once wore on his skin. But the truth is found in the wind that blows through the Jade Cloud peaks, carrying the scent of ancient incense. It is found in the steady heartbeat of every warrior who fights for justice without seeking a reward. It is found in the quiet moments when a soul decides to follow its path, regardless of the cost. The cosmic stakes are always high, and the hero's path is always narrow, yet the journey is the only thing that matters. Fate is not a prison. It is the map, and we are the travelers who decide how to walk the road. The sun sets on another day, the stars begin to emerge, writing their stories across the velvet sky once more. The silent Thunder Monastery still stands, though its walls are covered in moss and its halls are filled with silence. Yet deep within its vaults, a new chain is being forged, ready to hold a power that has not yet arrived. The world breathes, expanding and contracting with the rhythm of a celestial lung. Every ending is merely a prelude to a beginning that we cannot yet see. Remember that your life too holds a mandate, a unique purpose that only you can fulfill in the grand tapestry. Do not fear the weight of your destiny, for the stars themselves were forged in pressure and heat. Carry your sword with honor, speak your truth with courage, and walk your path with a heart full of light. For in the end, we are all stories being told by the universe to itself. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio for more tales of destiny and the martial spirit.